It was raining again on the outer planet of Veora 9. Thick black clouds covered the sky, and cold water poured from above like a waterfall. The wind was sharp and the storm had no end in sight. In the middle of this lonely land, there stood a small wooden cabin. Old and quiet, inside lived a man, a human alone. His name was Ray. He was a former soldier who had seen too many battles. Too many deaths. Now he just wanted peace. Away from war, away from people. But that night something changed. Ray was sitting near his small heater, drinking a cup of hot tea. Outside, the storm screamed like a beast. Then he heard something strange. Not thunder, not wind, it was soft. Like water moving, slow footsteps in the rain. He stood up, picked up his coat, and opened the door quietly. At first he saw nothing. Just rain hitting the ground, trees moving in the wind and mud everywhere. Then he saw her, a girl no older than 20, was standing near the edge of the forest. She was not human, her skin was light blue. Her long dark hair was wet and stuck to her back. She was shaking, shivering badly. She wore rags and torn cloth that didn't cover her well, but she was washing herself, using the cold rainwater to clean dirt from her arms, her face, her neck. Her hands moved slowly like she was scared, like she had done this many times before. She didn't see Ray. Ray didn't move. He just watched her from the shadow of his porch. She looked weak, thin, and hurt. He noticed bruises on her skin, some new, some old. She looked like someone who had been beaten and left to survive alone. But even with pain on her body, there was something soft in her eyes. She was trying to make herself clean even in the coldest rain. Like it was the only thing she could control, Ray felt something move in his heart. She reminded him of the soldiers he saw in war, the ones who cried quietly in the dark, the ones who were broken but still tried to live. He didn't know who she was, but he couldn't stay silent anymore. He stepped forward slowly, his voice calm. "Hey," he said, not loud, just enough to reach her. "You can use my shower." She turned fast, eyes wide with fear. She stared at him like a cornered animal. Then, without a word, she turned and ran. Her feet slipped in the mud and she almost fell. She disappeared into the trees before Ray could say another word. He stood there, rain hitting his face, confused. Why was she here? Why was she so scared? And why did she run when all he offered was kindness? He walked to the place where she was standing. There on the ground he found a piece of cloth. It was part of her dress, burned at the edge. Someone had tried to destroy her clothing. Maybe her identity. He picked it up and held it in his hand. It was still warm from her body. He looked into the forest. But she was gone. That night Ray couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the girl, the way she looked at him, like she didn't trust anyone, like she had been hurt too many times. His mind was full of questions. Who was she? Where did she come from? And why was she alone in this storm? He sat by the window and stared into the dark. Maybe she would return, maybe not, but if she did, he wanted her to know one thing, that someone in this cold world still cared. Ray didn't know her name, he didn't know her story, but deep inside he felt something. This was not just a meeting. This was the beginning of something bigger, something that would change both of their lives. As the storm raged on, a small light stayed on in Ray's cabin. A signal to the girl in the rain. A silent message, "You're not alone anymore." The next morning, Ray stood outside his cabin. Watching the trees sway in the soft wind, the rain had slowed, but the ground was still wet and full of puddles. He looked toward the forest where the girl had run. She had disappeared into the shadows, but her presence was still here like a soft echo. Ray had seen many things in his life. Wars, broken planets, screaming children, but that girl in the rain had left a deeper mark than any bullet ever could. He walked back inside, placed a warm blanket on the porch, and set down a small container of food. Not much, just some bread, dried meat, and fruit next to it. He placed a clean towel, folded neatly. He didn't know if she'd come back, but he hoped she would. Then Ray left the shower running gently inside, door open, steam rising. A sign that it was safe. Hours passed, the forest stayed quiet. Like it was holding its breath, Ray sat by the window, watching, waiting, not moving. Then just after sunset, he checked the porch again. The food was gone, the towel too, but he hadn't seen or heard anything. She was quiet, like a ghost. Ray smiled a little. She had come back, that meant she was still nearby, still alive, and maybe, just maybe, starting to trust him. The next night, Ray did the same. He left new food, a fresh towel, and kept the shower running warm. This time he didn't wait by the window. He stepped outside, pulled on his coat, and sat under the porch roof. The rain was soft now, not cold but gentle, like the planet was calming down. He sat still, eyes half closed, pretending to be asleep. Then he heard it, the smallest sound, a step, a breath, a whisper in the wet air. He didn't move. He didn't open his eyes, but he listened. The girl walked slowly from the trees, barefoot, hair tied back with a thin string, her body wrapped in the blanket from the day before. She stood near the door, silent, watching him. Then she reached for the towel and the food, but this time she didn't run. She walked to the open door and stepped inside. Ray opened his eyes just a little. He saw her shadow moving gently through the light steam. She stood in front of the shower, unsure, touching the warm water with shaking fingers. Then she stepped in. Her hands moved across her arms, face and neck with care. As if she was afraid the warmth might vanish, Ray stayed outside. Not wanting to scare her, he just listened. He could hear the water falling. And a soft sound like crying, but not sad tears. Tears of relief when she came out. She looked cleaner, calmer, but still scared. She started to walk away again, but Ray spoke without turning. "You don't have to run," he said, his voice calm and low. She stopped. "I won't hurt you," he added. Still, she didn't speak. She just stood there, rain hitting her softly, before vanishing back into the trees. The next night she returned again. This time, she stepped into the shower while Ray sat inside, not hiding, just sipping tea. He didn't talk, he didn't ask questions. He just let her be after she was done. She stood near the door, eyes down, hands tight around the towel. Then finally she spoke, her voice soft and unsure. "Why are you being kind?" Ray looked at her, surprised but glad to hear her voice. "Because someone once helped me when I had nothing," he said. "And I remember how that felt." She looked at him for a moment, not angry, not afraid, just confused. Like no one had ever told her that before. "What's your name?" he asked. She didn't answer. So he smiled and said, "I'll call you Rain. If that's all right." She gave a small nod, almost a smile, then left again, disappearing into the forest like a whisper. Ray stood there for a long time after she was gone. He knew one thing for sure. She wasn't just some lost girl. She had secrets, deep ones, maybe dangerous, but she was also human in some way, not by blood, but by soul. The next morning, Ray went to the forest edge looking for signs. He found a small footprint in the mud, and next to it a string made from cloth and leaves. She had made it herself, strong and careful. That meant she had skills, maybe military, maybe survival training. She was more than just a runaway that night. He left out a small book and a pencil with the food. Inside the book he wrote, "If you can't speak, you can write, 'Tell me who you are. You don't have to be afraid here,' and under those words, he left space waiting for her to answer. The rain had returned, but it was softer now, more like a whisper than a roar. Ray sat on the porch again, wrapped in his coat. He wasn't waiting by accident anymore. He was waiting for her, the girl he called Rain. He didn't know her real name, but she hadn't corrected him. That meant something. That meant she had accepted it, accepted him. In a world where people barely looked at each other, that was a beginning. Each night she came quietly. She never walked directly to the house. She always moved slowly, staying in the shadows. But when she entered the warm steam of the running shower, something changed in her. She stayed longer. She didn't tremble as much. She even started using the soap Ray left out, the one with a soft lemon smell. She had never spoken her past, but her silence was loud. It was the kind of silence only pain can teach. One night, as Ray drank tea near the heater, he heard her footsteps again. She walked inside, still quiet but not afraid. She stood by the door after washing and looked around the room. Her eyes moved across the shelves. The books, the quiet fire. Ray didn't speak. He knew some people need time, so he just said, "There's food on the table. If you want." She walked toward it slowly. She touched the edge of the table, then sat on the floor near it instead of using the chair. She picked up a piece of bread and bit into it like it was treasure. Ray turned away, giving her space, pretending to read a book. After a while, she spoke, very soft, like a breeze. "You're not like them." Ray didn't answer right away. He placed his book down and looked at her. "No," he said. "I'm not." She looked at him with her large, ocean-like eyes. "Why are you here all alone?" she asked. Ray sighed, thinking how to answer without opening old wounds. "I used to fight in the war," he said. "I saw too much, did too much, and one day I just left." She nodded like she understood, then she whispered, They used me too. Those words hit Ray like a stone. Used, not helped, not trained. Used. He stood up and walked to a small storage room beside the kitchen. He returned with a soft, clean blanket. You don't have to sleep in the forest anymore, he said. Offering it to her, Rain hesitated, but then took it with both hands. She held it against her chest, eyes wet but not crying. It was the first thing given to her without a price. Later, Ray went outside and checked the old tool shed behind the house. He cleared it out, made space, and added a pillow and a mattress. It wasn't much, but it was warm, dry, and hers that night. She slept there, curled under the blanket, not far from him, close enough to feel safe. For the first time, she wasn't hiding in the trees. She was home, even if just a little, the next morning. Ray found a message scratched into the dirt near the shower. It said, "Thank you." 2 words, but they meant more than books of stories. They meant trust, and trust was harder to earn than love. Rain kept coming every day. She started brushing her hair, using the mirror, wearing clean clothes. She even hummed sometimes, small broken tunes like birds learning to sing again. Ray taught her how to use the kitchen. She watched with wide eyes as he cracked eggs and stirred soup. When he handed her a spoon, she touched it gently, like it was alive. Little by little, she became brighter. But one thing never changed. She still refused to tell her real name. And she always looked over her shoulder when she heard a sound outside. Ray knew something or someone and was still chasing her. He didn't ask yet. He knew the time would come when she'd tell him everything, but that time wasn't now. Now she needed peace. One day, Rain surprised him. She was sitting on the porch when he came back from chopping wood. She was reading a book he'd left on the table. The book was about stars, planets, and faraway systems. Her voice was quiet as she read, "Some planets reign for years." "Like this one," Ray smiled. "Yes, but not every storm is forever." She looked at him, a hint of a smile touching her lips. "Maybe," she whispered. "But sometimes the storm follows you." Before he could reply, a strange sound echoed in the sky, a soft engine hum. Not from this area. A ship, low and slow, searching, scanning. Rain's face turned pale. She stood up fast, dropping the book. "They're here," she whispered. Ray stepped closer. "Who?" She looked him straight in the eyes, her voice breaking. "They're coming for me." A hard knock came at Ray's door just after dusk. The sound was sharp and clear in the quiet cabin. Ray froze with an old fear in his chest. He had not heard a real knock in years, only orders and alarms. He opened the door slowly, hand on the wood. 3 figures stood in the rain. Tall and cold, their armor dark and slick. They moved like hunters, not like travelers. One of them stepped forward and raised a small bright screen. On the screen was a clear, hollow image of Rain, but her face looked different, empty and plain. The hunter's voice was soft and dangerous. "We are looking for property," he said, voice like wind over metal. "You have had strangers here?" Ray felt his heart beat fast, but his voice was steady. "No," he said, trying to sound calm. "I live alone." The hunter narrowed his eyes and scanned the yard. His scanner light swept the trees and the porch, green and slow. Ray watched the light move over the place where Rain slept under the old shed. The hunter smiled. "A small, cruel thing." "You forget," he said. "You cannot hide what belongs to the Empire." Ray felt anger and fear mix inside him. He thought of the small mattress under the roof, the thin blanket, the way Rain smiled when she ate. He could not give her away, not to them. The hunters walked the land, boots heavy in the mud. They asked quiet questions to the air, to the trees, to the night. Ray kept his face still, answering small things, but not everything. When one hunter reached the shed, he crouched and touched the ground. He smelled the earth and sniffed the air like an animal. Then he found a small hair caught on a nail, long and dark. He held it up with a gloved finger like proof. "You were here," he said to Ray. But he spoke to the wind as well. Rain stayed still under the floorboards, pressed to the cold wood. Listening to each breath and footstep, she could smell them, could feel the danger through the planks. Her body wanted to run, but there was nowhere safe to go. The lead hunter turned to Ray and asked for papers. Ray showed a worn card with an old name and a rusty stamp. Not much, but true. The hunter scanned it and then the air, then laughed low. "You are a liar," he said. "The Empire keeps records." He held up the hollow again, the image of Rain flickering, and added, "She is flagged as a bioasset, serial code V9A3. Escaped during transport." Ray's chest tightened. Bioasset, serial code, a machine name for a living thing. He thought of the burns on the cloth he found, the marks on Rain's skin, the way she flinched at sound. He thought of the people who sell, who buy, who break others for profit. Ray tried to distract them, a small trick he learned long ago. He told a story about swamp lizards that ate hollow batteries, and about a fake map left by smugglers. The hunter laughed at the lizard story, but his eyes were sharp. He nodded to his men, and they left the yard. Boots heavy on the mud, for now they went away. Not satisfied, but gone when the hunters left. Ray closed the door and leaned on it. Shaking, he could hear rain move in the shed. Thin sounds like someone breathing through a straw. He went outside and crouched by the shed, rain soaking his coat. "Are you all right?" he whispered, though he knew she heard him. A small hand slipped out under the boards and touched his finger. Cold and trembling, Rain crawled from her hiding place, face pale in the rain, eyes wide and full of fear. She looked different when she was scared, older and small at once. Ray helped her into the light and wrapped the blanket around her shoulders. "You must not hide under there again," he said quietly. "They will come back," she shook her head and whispered. "They can find me anywhere." Her voice was thin, like paper in the wind. Ray looked at the marks on her arms and the faint lines near her neck, where metal had once been. He felt a hot anger, hot as the heater inside. "How many times did they take you?" he asked softly, not demanding, only trying to know. She did not answer right away. Instead, she pointed to the hollow picture on his door, the one the hunter used. "There are lights inside me," she said. "They put them where a person has a heart. They call it a core. They told me to be quiet." Ray could feel the words like cold knives. Lights where a heart should be, a core that tells what to do. It was cruel and small. They moved back inside together, wet and quiet, the heater breathing warm steam around them. Ray locked the door and drew the curtains tight like a shield. He looked at her and said, "We will make it hard for them to find you." She looked at him, eyes old and tired, but there was a small light there too. Like a seed under snow, outside the sky stayed dark, and the rain kept falling, but it sounded different now. Heavy with promise or threat, Ray did not know which. He began to plan. Simple things first: hide signs of life, move the blanket, scrub the steps so no prints showed, block the shed with old boards. He also knew the hunters had a code, a machine name, and a memory net that could search a wide area. It would not be easy. Rain sat by the small fire and folded her hands, staring at the flame. "Why did you help me?" she asked, voice small and honest. Ray looked at the fire and then at her, the truth in him plain. "Because I remember what it feels like to be hunted," he said. "And because no one should live with a light where their heart must be told what to do." She touched his hand, her fingers cold. "And for..." The first time she said a small name, not her real one but an echo. "Thank you," she whispered, and the words stayed in the room like a promise. The soft blue light blinked from inside the shed. It was quiet but alive like a pulse. Rain stared at it, frozen in fear, her breath shallow. Ray rushed over, crouched beside her, and saw the small black object hidden under the wood. It was no bigger than a coin, but it glowed with danger, Rain whispered. "It's a tracer." Her hands were shaking, her lips pale. "They put it under my skin, to track me, to control me." Ray didn't ask more. He moved fast, grabbing a cloth and a knife from the kitchen. He returned, looked her in the eyes and asked, "Do you trust me?" She nodded without speaking. Ray heated the knife over the fire, the metal turning red. Rain sat on the floor, biting her blanket, tears already in her eyes. "This will hurt," he said, "but once it's out." "They can't find you." She nodded again, her eyes closed now. Ray made a small cut near her collarbone where the light glowed under the skin. Blood ran down slowly, but she didn't scream. He dug carefully, not too deep, and pulled out the tiny tracker, still blinking. He dropped it into a metal cup and smashed it with a hammer. The light died instantly. Rain leaned back, breathing hard, sweat on her forehead. Ray cleaned the cut and wrapped it with clean cloth. "You're safe now," he said softly. She opened her eyes, looked at him with gratitude and sadness. "No," she whispered. "You don't understand." She sat up, her body weak but her voice steady. "I was created, not born," she said. "They made me in a lab on Omega Station. They mixed human DNA with something else, something ancient and fast." Ray listened in silence, not interrupting. "I was trained to obey, not to feel," she continued. "But something broke inside me, or maybe woke up. She looked down at her hands. I started feeling sorry for others like me. I started asking questions, and they called it a malfunction. Ray felt anger rise in him. What did they do to you? He asked. They sold me to a warlord, she said. He wanted a bodyguard, but I ran before he could bind me with a new command chip. Her voice cracked. I jumped off the ship during a landing, fell into the mud and rain, and kept running. Until I found you. Ray looked at her with soft eyes. You're not a malfunction. Rain, you're a person, he said. Whatever they did, they couldn't kill your soul. She looked surprised at his words. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Like she was more than a tool, more than a mistake. I don't know how to be a person, she said. I don't even know if I can. Ray stood up and offered his hand. You start by choosing who you want to be, he said. You don't have to be what they made. Rain took his hand slowly, standing on weak legs. I don't want to run anymore, she whispered. I want to stay, Ray nodded. Then we prepare, he said. They'll come back stronger next time. We have to be ready. For the next few days, Ray trained Rain like a soldier. He taught her how to hide her tracks, how to listen to the wind, how to use old weapons stored in the shed. She learned fast. Her body remembering things she wasn't taught but somehow already knew. She wasn't just strong, she was fast, too fast. Sometimes when she moved, it felt like the air bent around her one night. She stood in front of Ray and asked, Will you let me fight beside you if they come? Ray looked at her, proud but afraid. I won't stop you, he said. But I hope you never have to. That same night, Ray placed the broken tracer in a box and sent it far away using a delivery drone. He hoped the signal would mislead the hunters, send them in the wrong direction. Rain watched the drone fly off. Her arms crossed over her chest. Her eyes were focused, not afraid anymore. I want to protect this place, she said. You gave me something I didn't know I needed, a home. Ray smiled. It's your home too now, he said. But deep down he knew peace would not last. They had removed the tracker, hidden her scent, moved everything that could be seen, but machines don't stop. And the people who built Rain, they didn't like losing control. The next day the sky turned red, not from rain, but from heat and ship heat far above. A black vessel moved through the clouds, silent but heavy. Rain and Ray both watched it from the tree line. It's not a patrol ship, Rain said. It's a retrieval-class vessel, Ray whispered. Then they're serious now. The black ship floated in the sky like a silent shadow. Its lights were off, but its engines glowed red underneath. It was not here to search, it was here to take. And it was coming straight for them. Ray stood at the window, watching the ship descend through the clouds. Rain stood beside him, her body still but her fingers twitching. She could feel it in her bones. They had come for her. Not to talk, not to ask, to take, to control, to erase. Ray handed her a small headset and said, This will let us hear each other no matter what happens. She took it and placed it on her ear. No more running, no more hiding. They had prepared for this. They had wired the shed, buried traps near the trees, and created a false trail leading away from the cabin. But still the fear was real, even for someone like Rain, who had once been called a weapon. The ship stopped above the forest and dropped a wide beam of light. From it 5 soldiers descended, no ropes, no noise, just gravity boots and black armor. Each held a weapon designed to subdue, not kill, but Rain knew better. Once taken, she would never be free again. Ray picked up his old rifle. Fingers steady, he hadn't used it in years. But today it felt like an extension of his arm. Let's go, he said, voice firm. Rain nodded, her eyes glowing faintly. Not from implants, but from resolve. They slipped out the back of the cabin and moved into the trees. Rain took position high in the branches. Silent as wind, Ray hid behind thick roots. Eyes on the cabin, they waited. The soldiers landed, boots pressing deep into the wet ground. One of them scanned the cabin and said, Heat detected, 1 life form, male, possibly armed. Another replied, Retrieve the subject at all costs. They moved in fast, opening the cabin door with a short electric blast. But the cabin was empty, except for the heater and a dummy covered in a warm blanket. The trap triggered, a flash bomb exploded, followed by a net of wires that crackled with static. 2 soldiers fell, caught and twitching. Ray fired from behind, hitting a third in the leg, sending him crashing into the mud. Rain dropped from the trees behind the 4th, her body twisting mid-air. She moved like liquid, too fast to follow. Her foot struck the soldier's neck and he dropped instantly. She grabbed his stun rod and turned to face the last one. But the last soldier was different. His armor was stronger and his voice cold. "You were made to obey," he said to Rain. "You belong to the project." Rain gritted her teeth. "I belong to no one," she said. He charged, swinging a heavy plasma shield. Rain dodged, slid under his arm and hit his leg. But he grabbed her and threw her against a tree. Hard Ray saw her fall and shouted. He fired twice, but the man's shield blocked both shots. The soldier walked toward Ray now. Slow and deadly, Rain groaned and stood back up. Blood on her lips, she looked at Ray. He was in danger because of her. This man, this human who gave her shelter, peace and a name. She would not let him fall. She ran, full speed, jumped off a tree root, and slammed into the soldier's back. They crashed to the ground, rolling in the mud. She grabbed his helmet and smashed it against a rock until it cracked. Then she whispered something in a language only the labs knew. A shutdown code once used by her creators, now used to end them. The soldier froze, then fell limp, his system locked. His power gone, Ray limped over to her, bleeding from his shoulder. "You all right?" he asked, breathing hard. Rain nodded and pulled him close. "You should have run," she said. Ray smiled weakly. "Not without you?" They looked around and the forest was quiet now. The storm above had passed, the black ship still hovered, but it did not release more soldiers. Instead, it began to rise again, slowly disappearing into the clouds. "They didn't expect us to fight back," Rain said. "They'll think I'm dead." Ray shook his head. "No," he said. "They'll come again. But next time we'll be ready." Rain helped him back to the cabin. Inside, she cleaned his wound and wrapped his arm with bandages. He sat near the heater, breathing slowly. "You saved me," he said. She sat beside him. "You saved me first." There was a long silence between them. Not heavy, not sad, peaceful. For the first time, Rain allowed herself to rest. Her head leaned on Ray's shoulder, eyes slowly closing. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered. Ray closed his eyes too. "Good," he said softly. "Because this is your home now, outside." The last drops of rain slid down the window, and inside, two souls who had once been broken sat close together, not as soldier and experiment, but as something stronger, as family. The sun rose over Viora 9 for the first time in weeks. The storms had passed, and for once, the sky was not gray but soft gold. Mist floated between the trees, and quiet birds sang songs Rain had never heard before. Inside the cabin, Ray was already awake, sipping tea with one good arm. His shoulder was healing slowly. But the pain didn't matter much now across from him. Rain stood barefoot on the porch, eyes closed. Feeling the sunlight on her skin, she was no longer shivering, no longer hiding. Her clothes were clean, her body strong, her mind quiet. But she was not the same girl who had once washed herself in the rain. She had changed. She had chosen who she wanted to be. Ray watched her with silent pride. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She turned to look at him and smiled. A real smile this time. And that was more than words could ever say then. A new sound filled the air, not thunder, not wind, a ship, but not like the black one from before. This one was silver and bright, gliding down slowly with soft blue engines. Ray stood up, heart already cautious. Rain stepped off the porch, her eyes calm. The ship landed in the open field near the forest. Its door opened with a hiss and a tall woman stepped out. She was human, or at least mostly, with tech along her arms and stars in her eyes. She wore no armor, carried no weapons, only a badge that said Freeborn Coalition. She walked forward and stopped a few steps from Rain. "You're Rain," she said. Not as a question, but as truth. Rain nodded. The woman smiled. "We've heard whispers. Someone who broke free, who resisted the command codes, who fought back." Ray moved closer, his hand near his belt just in case. The woman raised a hand slowly. "We're not here to take," she said. "We're here to ask." Rain tilted her head. "Ask what?" The woman looked at both of them. "There's a war coming, not like the one before, but deeper. A war for minds, for freedom." She pointed to the sky. "There are more like you, Rain, hidden, trapped, waiting. We need someone like you to lead them out." Rain looked down, silent for a moment. She had run, she had hidden, she had survived. Now someone was asking her to rise. "Why me?" she asked. The woman replied, "Because you said no. Because you chose to feel. Because they made you a weapon, and you became something else." Ray stepped beside her. His face said nothing, but his eyes said everything. Pride. Fear and the pain of letting go, Rain turned to him. If I go, will you come with me? Ray blinked, surprised. I thought maybe you needed to walk this one alone, he said. Rain shook her head. I may have learned how to survive alone, she said. But I learned how to live with you. Ray's mouth curved into a slow smile. Then let's do it, he said, together. The woman from the ship nodded. There's space for two, she said. Rain went inside and packed only what mattered. The old towel Ray gave her, a photo they took near the fire, and the broken tracer, now just a reminder. Ray brought his rifle and his tea mug. The cabin would stay behind. But the memory of it would travel with them. As the ship rose into the morning sky, Rain looked down one last time, the trees, the shed, the porch where she once sat shivering. All of it small now, but never forgotten. She reached for Ray's hand and held it tight. He looked at her. You're not the girl in the rain anymore, he said. Rain smiled. No, she said. I'm the one who walked out of it. Outside the window, stars waited, so did danger and war. And more pain. But also hope, purpose, freedom. And this time, she wouldn't be running from it. She would run toward it. With her own name, her own choice, and someone by her side who believed in her. Not because she was made, but because she lived, and so, the girl who once hid from the world flew straight into its heart, ready to fight, not to destroy, but to protect, not to obey, but to lead. Because even on distant worlds, even in the darkest storms, a simple whisper of kindness can still change everything.